In this video, we will be talking about if machines could ever have or gain consciousness.
Imagine it is the year 2100, and Kimberly has just unwrapped her own robot, Emmett. Emmett is designed to replicate the outward behavior of a human being, even in the tiniest details, and he also responds the way a human would respond.
Hi, I'm Emmett, your robotic helper and friend. How are you?
I'm good. Before you start doing housework, let's get one thing straight. You don't really understand anything, and you can't think. You don't have feelings because you're just a piece of machinery, right?
I'm a machine, but of course I understand you. I am responding to you in English, aren't I?
I read your manual, and inside your head, there is a powerful computer. That computer is programmed so that you are allowed to walk, talk, and behave just as a human would. You only simulate intelligence, but there is no genuine understanding going on in your head.
The question here is Kimberly correct? In principle, is it possible for a machine to think or have its own feelings? To prove her point, Kimberly then outlines a philosophical thought experiment to explain why Emmett does not have a consciousness.
The reason you don't understand anything is because you're a computer, and computers don't understand anything. A computer is just a device for shuffling symbols. Symbols get fed into the computer, and different programs arrange the symbols differently in response.
So a computer just shuffles symbols and they don't mean anything to the computer?
Yes, and I shall prove it to you. Let me tell you about an experiment introduced by a philosopher called John Searle back in 1980.
The Chinese room thought experiment goes like this. There is a woman locked in a room and she is given a bunch of cards with symbols and squiggles on them. The symbols on the card are actually Chinese symbols, but the woman in the room does not understand any of it, and she thinks these symbols are just meaningless shapes.
The woman is also given instructions on how to assemble and shuffle the symbols to give back as a response. The instructions for a symbol shuffling, her program, allows the woman to give back correct Chinese answers. Outside the room, there are Chinese people. The Chinese people may be fooled into thinking that there was someone inside the room who understood Chinese, but in fact, the woman inside the room wouldn't know anything about what is happening.
Therefore, the woman inside the room would be doing something that a piece of machinery could do, just like being programmed to do something. Searle's point was that the best that a piece of machinery could do is simulate and mimic understanding. All computers, no matter how complex, function the same way.
That's why you only merely provide a simulation of someone who understands.
But I thought I understood.
You only say that because you're a good simulation.
If that is true, then what's the difference between why you understand and why I don't?
Well, according to Searle, you lack the right kind of stuff.
What do you mean?
You're made of the wrong kind of material. In a way, us humans are biological machines that have evolved naturally, but you, Emmett, are not a biological machine. You're an electronic computer with a plastic and alloy body.
No, but inside my head is an artificial metal and silicon brain. My artificial brain isn't made out of the same organic material as yours, but it is wired the same way. Every one of my artificial neurons are designed to function just as an ordinary neuron would. My brain is also connected to my artificial body in exactly the same way, and because I am wired just as you are, I respond in the same way you do.
I see.
And now that you know that you and I function the same way internally, does that change your mind about whether or not I have a consciousness and I can understand things?
No, I am still convinced that you are made of the wrong material. You need a brain made out of organic material just like mine in order to genuinely understand or have feelings.
I don't see how the material my brain is made out of has something to do with this. After all, there is no symbol shuffling going on in there.
Well, I guess you're not a computer in that sense, so Searle's thought experiment doesn't really apply, but it still seems that you're just a machine.
You are one too. You are a biological organic machine, while I'm a metal and silicon machine. I am also inwardly aware that I really do understand. I'm not mimicking all this, but it's difficult for me to prove that I do understand, but neither can you prove that you have thoughts and feelings, or so on.
I guess you're right.
Let me try to prove my point. Let's say we were gradually replacing your organic neurons in your brain with artificial metal and silicon ones like mine. If after a year or so you were to have a brain just like mine, what do you think would happen to you?
Well, I guess I would slowly cease to understand as more and more artificial neurons were replaced. My thoughts and feelings would slowly drain away, and I would become inwardly dead, just like you, as my artificial neurons wouldn't be made of the right kind of stuff.
And would anyone notice any outward difference?
I suppose not, as I would still be behaving in the same way since artificial neurons perform the same job as normal neurons.
But would you notice any loss of understanding or feeling? Presumably, if you had noticed, then you would think that something was strange or tell someone that your feelings and thoughts had started to fade away, right?
I guess you're right.
Then again, you wouldn't say anything like that because your outward behavior, as you've just said, would remain the same as usual.
I see.
I rest my case. You think you're inwardly aware of something, but you wouldn't be because inwardly you can't tell the difference between us two, and outwardly you wouldn't behave any differently than I do.
But I just know that there is more to that, and all my thoughts and feelings have to be more extreme than a few pieces of metal and silicon.
The last point we make is the problem of other minds. This is the last point because none of us are certain that other people think and feel the same way that we do. The problem of other minds not only eliminates the possibility that machines can have minds, but it also eliminates the possibility of other humans having minds. We might be able to see that they have minds, but we cannot trust our senses easily as they are easy to trick. There is one thing we know for certain, and that is that we exist.
Revisiting the points Kimberly and Emmett had made, Kimberly talked about Searle's Chinese room thought experiment, deducing that Emmett is only a program and cannot think. Emmett talked about how his body was wired the same way as Kimberly's, thus defeating Searle's thought experiment. Emmett also stated that if he had gradually replaced Kimberly's neurons with artificial neurons, nothing would change because there would be no inward or outward difference. Then we talked about the problem of other minds, eliminating all the points Kimberly and Emmett had made.
This means that there is no certain answer to the question, could a robot think, as the question itself is near impossible to answer.